The coolest thing about the Bridgehold being part of the Global Read Aloud is all the children that get to read it all over the world. I mean, I don't want to cry now, but I've cried about it a lot. Because, I mean, I looked at this map the other day, and there are children in parts of the world that I haven't traveled to, and I've traveled to many countries, and I've lived in 5. And so for me to just see that is amazing, and yeah, really humbling. There are several personal connections. The first is that I have a disability myself. It doesn't show, so people don't realize that. So they look at me and they think that I don't have a disability, but I actually do. So I think because of that, disability has meant a lot to me and plays a part in my books. The second thing I want to say, though, is that I didn't make Ruku have a disability. A, it's based on somebody I knew, as are the other characters in the book. But B, when they showed up in my head, they show up like whoever they are. And that's just part of her, just the same way that my disability is part of me. So yeah, so she came there that way, fully and completely. The Bridge Home is my first middle grade novel, and I think for me the difference is that to make someone laugh and to make someone cry in a middle grade, I think is harder, and I am so immensely grateful to my editor Nancy Paulson, to the ghosts that haunt my head and come to me as characters, and to everything that this book has been able to do that. Because with middle grade, you can't show everything on the page. And with YA, you can. And I think it's easier than with YA, you can show really horrific scenes, and if people aren't moved, that's because they're not human or something, or they have hearts of stone. And to me, so it's easier to get an emotional response because of that with YA. With middle grade, it's much harder because you still hope for that emotional response, or in my case, I want that emotional response. And to get it by showing much less on the page is a delicate balance, it's an art, and it was something that I keep saying the word grateful, but maybe I can't say it enough. It's humbling to me when people not just write to me and tell me that they laughed and cried, which is really important, but more important than anything else in the whole world is the fact that 2 adults, 2 women and several young people have actually moved to safer spaces because of the book. They opened up to me either after an event, person to person, or via the internet. And they've actually been able to move to a place in their lives that's better. And to me, that's the most humbling thing of all. And not just young people, the fact that even 2 adult women have had that happen, that's huge. What kept me going as an author, even after all the rejection by agents for my first novel, and what keeps me going as an author even today, because it's not always easy, is the fact that I feel humbled and grateful and happy that my work is able to make a change in the world. I mean, for my work to actually have social change, for it to change human beings' lives, that is immense. It means whatever happens to me, if I die in the next 5 minutes, at least the fact that I've lived has made some difference, some good difference in the world. It hasn't been in vain. Be a writer if you love to write. That's the most important thing. Don't be a writer for any other reason except your love of writing. Let that be something, if that's the way that you express yourself and that moves you, then write. The other things that I would say to anyone interested in writing is read, 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 read. Read as many books as you can possibly get your hands on, especially when you're young and you have all this time in the world. You know, you really have a lot of time. I would say read a lot, and don't worry, don't be in a hurry to get published. These days there are so many ways that you can get your work published, but I don't think that's the point of being a writer. You're a writer because you read, because you write, because you love words, because you love story. You're not a writer because you get published. You're not a writer because you get awards. You're a writer because you love writing and books and words. That's the most important thing to remember. Yeah. I hope that every reader, young or old, that finishes The Bridge Home will not just fall in love with the characters, which I want them to very much, but will also do something to make this world a better place so that the Rukus and Vijis and Aruls and Muttus who are alive today will have a better environment, so that all of us will have a better world. I do have siblings. I have 3 older siblings. I'm not very close to them. They're much older in age than I am. Their views are quite different from mine. But I have several cousins, and some of my cousins I'm very close to. And when I moved to this country, just like Viji and Ruku had to make friends when they moved to Chennai city and they didn't know anyone, I didn't know anyone here when I moved. I was barely out of my teens. I was in graduate school. And like them, I had to make friends. And like them, luckily, I found a few very, very good friends. And they are my family. I don't think I ever got really stuck while writing The Bridge Home. There are different ways that I can answer that question. One is that when a book shows up in my brain, I tend to puke words out on the page. So I just go like, and then I vomit words on the page. And then I clean it up with bleach. And the bleach cleaning process is certainly helped by my wonderful editor, Nancy Paulson. But even if you don't have an editor, I think there's a time when you have to look at your book and cut out parts. It can be hard to do. It can be like cutting out pieces of yourself, but you actually have to do that. So I do that. That's the process that I go through. And sometimes there are places during the editing process that I feel sort of stuck because I don't know why this scene is maybe there twice. What should I do next? But I don't think I've ever had an actual sort of getting stuck and not knowing what to do problem, because by the time I start writing, the story is formed in my mind. I might not know exactly what happens, but I know my characters, I know who they are, and they drive the story, and I know where it begins, I know where it ends always, and I know who the people are. And what happens in the middle, to me, is not, I don't want to say not as important, because of course that's the story, but it comes from that middle and that end and knowing my characters. My favorite parts are all the funny parts, every part that made me laugh, every sentence that made me laugh. All of them mean a lot to me because I think they show you as a reader that Ruku and Muthu and Arul and Viji are just kids, like any other child. They may be in difficult circumstances, but they're just like anyone else. And they are survivors. And I think what brings that out, that they're survivors, not victims, is the fact that you laugh with them before and even though you cry with them too.